Okay, very good. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us tonight and welcome to this virtual public information meeting for Link 101. We will start with some very quick introductions for the folks that you see on your screen here this evening. My name's Mindy Peterson. I am with Parsons. I'm the Public Involvement Director there. Parsons is the lead project development and design firm for Link 101. I'm joined by Dan Prevost, who also joined me last week for the public meetings. Dan is also with Parsons, and he is the project manager for Link 101. We are also joined this evening for the virtual meeting by several folks with INDOT and with Federal Highway as well. So we appreciate them taking the time to join us as well, and we welcome everybody who took time out of their busy evenings to join us. So thank you very much. I will point out that Barry Craig is also with us, and he is assisting big time on the technical front. So if you have any technical issues, you can reach out via chat to Barry and he'll try to get you straightened out and make sure that you're in good shape on that front. And with that note, we do want to cover a couple of housekeeping issues here. So we do have only presenters have their cameras and microphones on for the presentation portion. Use that chat function, which is right there. You can find that pretty easily, the chat function. Use that to share any feedback, questions, comments. It's at the top of the screen for many folks, not all, but many. Use that at any point during the presentation to share any feedback. I will let you know that any responses to any questions or comments will be provided offline. So if you have a preferred email address, please provide that to us as well. Otherwise, we'll rely on the email that was associated with your registration for this meeting. So again, more than welcome to ask any questions, provide any feedback, but we will be answering any of those questions offline and we'll get a response to you. But I do want to point out that we are going to have a comment session this evening that will follow the presentation. It's going to very much mimic what we did for the public meetings last week. So also, use your chat function for this. If you want to take part in the comment session at the end of the presentation, just provide your full name, type it out for me, and say, I would like to comment, I would like to speak. And at that point, we would ask you to unmute your mic. You can turn on your camera if you'd like, and we'll give you up to 1.5 minutes to provide your comments. Those will be transcribed and become part of the project record. So certainly not a must. You don't have to do it, but you are more than welcome to do that if you'd like to. And again, you can queue up and use the chat function at any time if you want to speak tonight. And with that, we will get started. To give you an idea of what to expect tonight, we had our first public meetings in January for Link 101. That's when we launched the project, and we gave folks an idea of what to expect when we talked about Link 101. The team really has been hard at work since then. And so a couple of big things that have emerged from that work. We have developed a draft purpose and need, basically the why for the project, and we have several preliminary alternatives. Dan is going to be outlining both of those items with a lot more detail. And then we always want to follow up and make sure that you have a good understanding of next steps and how to reach out to us and follow this project. And with that, we'll start with a little bit of a quick reset on the project overview, just for those folks who are getting back in touch with Link and getting a reset on where we are with the project. So this, of course, is an INDOT project. We are looking at alternatives for an improved State Road 101 connection. That's between the Markland Dam and US 50. And we are really talking about a large size project area here. This is a project that touches 4 counties. So we're talking about Switzerland, Ohio, Dearborn, and Ripley counties. So it is a large area that we're talking about. Where we are in the process right now, this is the environmental and preliminary design stage. I mentioned that draft purpose and need. That's important. That's the why for the project. Dan's going to walk through a lot of information on that front. And then I know there's a lot of interest when we talk about preliminary alternatives. We want to let you know that when we talk about those preliminary alternatives, we're starting very wide at this point. Dan will tell us how we reached those preliminary alternatives. He's going to do a short overview of those, and then he's going to follow those next important steps. How do we start to narrow that field of preliminary alternatives? And then what does that screening process look at that point? So that's kind of where we are. We also wanted to point out, as we talk about the preliminary alternatives and starting wide, we want to give you a big picture of what's happening next. So again, we start wide and then we go narrow. If you want to flip the next slide, Barry, that'd be great. So we do have an initial screening process that will take us from those 10 preliminary alternatives. We'll reach a much smaller number pretty quickly. Those smaller, that smaller group of alternatives will be carried forward for a lot more detailed analysis. We're looking at benefits, impacts, and cost, and that will help us identify that preferred alternative, hopefully by next summer. And then at that point, we'll have our draft environmental document, a lot of information that's included in that, and we'll have a hearing and we'll have a formal comment period. So a lot will be happening on that front. With that, I'm really going to go ahead and hand things off to Dan and let him walk through some of those issues that we already raised with the draft purpose and need and the preliminary alts. Dan?
Thanks, Mindy. Yeah, so Barry, if you want to flip. Actually, I just wanted to check real quick. There was a comment in the chat that somebody was having issues with hearing, and I just wanted to make sure that everybody can, if somebody could maybe drop a note in the chat to make sure that you can hear, that might clarify, just if it's okay, got a thumbs up. So I think that may be a challenge for, okay. All right, then we'll go ahead and proceed. So the first step in the process is really to, as Mindy said, to define that purpose and need. And this really is the why of the whole project. Why is the project needed at this time? What are the transportation problems that we're trying to address? And what are those desired outcomes? And it ultimately really forms the foundation of the entire project development and decision-making process. Because at the end of the day, we want to make sure that we identify a solution that addresses those needs. Since we initiated the project, the team's been out gathering lots of data. We've also been talking to stakeholders, about the needs in the project area. And based on that work, we've developed a draft purpose and need document. It's about 20 pages in total, and it's out on the project website today. You can also stop by the project office and take a look at it. But over these next couple slides, I'm going to provide an overview of those needs and show how those translated into the project purposes. So the first of those needs is based on the time and distance required to travel between the Markland Dam and US 50. So depending on where you are, where your final destination is, there are a number of different routes available. But what we've identified there on the screen in blue is what we call the shortest and fastest route. And realize that this is not, this route doesn't serve everyone's need, but we're just using it as a measuring stick. There's currently no direct route between the dam and US 50, but that route shown in blue there uses a total of 5 different roads, but it also adds at least 5.5 miles and 15 minutes of travel time to that trip. And also, any trucks that need to reach destinations within the study area are limited because of the restrictions on roadways within the study area due to safety issues. So the first purpose of the project is to reduce travel time within the project area by improving connectivity. And I'll mention, I think I've had a little internet glitch, and hopefully everybody can still hear me, but I think my camera has stopped functioning. So apologies for that. It should pop back in there in a few minutes. So the second need focuses on safety. The project team evaluated 5 years of crash data in the study area, and the results of that analysis are shown on the figure here. So any roadway segment shown in yellow, orange, or red are those that have crash rates that are higher than what would be expected for a roadway of that type and traffic volume. So based on those needs, the second purpose of the project is to improve safety by reducing vehicle miles traveled on roadways with elevated crash locations. In other words, we want to reduce the dependence on those roadways that have these demonstrated safety concerns. All right. So anyone who drives in this area is familiar with the narrow and windy, steep roads throughout the project area. These issues, what engineers call geometric deficiencies, contribute to those safety and travel time and connectivity issues that I talked about already. Again, just using that shortest and fastest route as a measuring stick, we've identified all the geometric deficiencies of the route. There are lots of them, but a couple that that we see being very prevalent are the lane widths and the shoulder widths throughout the project area, throughout that whole route. Essentially there are no shoulders on any of those roadways, and many of the lanes are narrower than what is standard. There's also a lot of substandard curves, and what we mean by that are curves. They could be either vertical curves, that's kind of a hump or a hill in the road, a crest, or horizontal, in other words, a bend in the road to the left or the right, that don't meet current standards. And what that means is that there essentially isn't enough you can't see far enough ahead over that crest or around that bend to safely travel at the speed of the roadway. So if there was an object on the other side of that curve or that crest, you wouldn't see it in time to stop safely. So the next purpose of the project is to provide a roadway that meets current design standards. The final needs that have been identified are, first, the fact that all the crossings of Lafayette Creek today have either their roadway approach or the bridge itself sitting below the 100-year flood elevation. And that means that when we do get those flood levels, those that rise up to that 100-year flood level, those roads become unsafe and impassable. So not only do they, does that mean that residents can't get where they need to go, it also impacts the ability of emergency services to respond in an efficient manner. In a similar way, there's a long history of landslides in this area due to the steep slopes and roads that were built in the early 20th century. So those slides, obviously create safety issues when they occur. But similar to the flooding issues, they also create access issues for residents and emergency responders. So the final purpose is to provide a roadway that is above the Lafayette Creek 100-year floodplain elevation and to minimize the risk of slides. So the purpose and need, and it is considered a draft at this point, is one of the things we're looking for feedback on throughout this comment period. As I mentioned earlier, the full documents up on the project website, also available for reference in the project office. And there's lots of ways to share feedback on that. And Mindy will talk you through those a bit more later. Also, we'll be accepting comments associated with this public meeting until September 8th. Now, we accept comments anytime throughout this entire process, but just for them to be part of the record associated with this meeting and to give the team the most opportunity to incorporate them into the decision-making process, you want to get them in by that September 8th deadline. So with that draft purpose and need identified, the project team has started to develop some preliminary alternatives. Again, this process starts with that purpose and need in mind. It also involves a lot of data, from design-related data, such as terrain and the location of existing roads or those floodways and streams, to the locations of residences and businesses and environmental resources. Also informing that process is the information we collected from meetings back in January with the public and with state and federal agencies. A couple of the alternatives that we're going to talk about tonight, as a matter of fact, came directly from suggestions from those public meetings. Some of the key factors that played into the development of those alternatives, all of them, you'll see all of them start at State Road 101 at the Markland Dam. That's kind of a common southern starting point for the project. But they consider a wide range of destinations along US 50, and that was intentional. We want to get feedback on what folks think makes sense there. Those preliminary alternatives also, have to take into account the challenging terrain that we have in the area. The Ohio River Valley and the Lafayette Creek Valley both have steep slopes, and then there's steep stream valleys throughout the project area. Now, along the way, we've worked to try to avoid or minimize impacts to residences, businesses, and environmental resources wherever possible. We've also tried to make use of existing roadway corridors, since that may provide opportunities for reduced impacts and costs. So when you look at the alternatives, you'll see a wide range of options, and that's intentional. We want to make sure that we understand the pros and cons of all of those different options and get feedback on them so we can make the best decision possible. So over the next couple slides, I'm going to introduce you to the alternatives. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but at this stage of the process, we don't have details about the proposed right-of-way or the specific environmental impacts. These alternatives are just a line on the map at this point. So in the next stage of the process, once we get feedback on these alternatives, we're going to develop each of them in more detail and identify all those specific impacts and costs and the like. So our goal in sharing these concepts at this point is really to get that high-level feedback. We want to make sure that we have a representative range of alternatives and get any recommendations for new alternatives or modifications before we move forward. So for the purpose of the presentation, we've grouped the alternatives based on where they connect to US 50. So at the public meeting, we had maps like this, but actually really big, about 7 feet tall, in fact, so folks could get a good view of each alternative. Now, I do want to mention that that map is now set up in the project office. If anybody wants to stop by and take a look at it, it's also available on the project website if you want to look at it there. But the first group of these alternatives actually includes just one alternative, and that's alternative A. It would start at the Markland Dam, just as I mentioned, all of them do, and connect to Aurora. So, and as a result of the the existing roads in that area or lack thereof, that most of this alignment would be what we call new terrain or new alignment, meaning it doesn't use any existing roadway corridors except as we approach State Road 56. The next group of alternatives are those that would connect to US 50 near Dillsboro. Most of these use a combination of existing roads and new alignment. One of them does use entirely new alignment. That's alternative B. One of the other things you'll see in in these alternatives is that they tend to cluster in their location that they cross Lafayette Creek, and part of that is due to the terrain in that area, the nature of Lafayette Creek in that area. There's the existing crossings at 262 and Nelson Road are there, are where they are because those are good locations to cross, better locations from a topographic standpoint to cross Lafayette Creek. So you may notice that these alternatives tend to cluster in those areas. Now, the next group is another one that contains just one alternative, and that's alternative D. This alternative would connect to US 50 right where US 101 or State Road 101 continues to the north today. And again, due to the nature of the existing roadway network in that area, this alternative would be almost entirely on new alignment. So then the last group of alternatives are those that would connect to US 50 in the Versailles area, either right in town or just to the east. Now, all of these alternatives make substantial use of existing roadways. All of them use a large portion of State Road 129, and several of them also use State Road 156 and State Road 56 between the Markland Dam and Vevey. There are also options you'll see for each of these to either travel through Vevey and Versailles or to bypass those. We want to make sure that we consider what both of those scenarios might mean in terms of benefits or impacts. So at this point, we're looking for feedback from the public. We want to know what you think about these alternatives. Are there some that you think better meet the needs of the project and why? As I mentioned earlier, we would like feedback about those connection locations to US 50. Is there one or more of those that you think would better serve the needs of the project area? And finally, do you have suggestions for either improving the alternatives or for new alternatives altogether? Or modifying one of the existing alternatives. So just whatever feedback you have about those alternatives, we want to get it from you. So as I said earlier, at this stage in the process, each of those alternatives is depicted as a simple line. But obviously, it's more than that. I want folks to get a sense of what that line might represent. So based on the traffic volumes that are out there today and those that we expect to be out there over the next 25 years, we're anticipating that the roadway would look something like this. It would be a 2-lane road with 12-foot lanes, which is pretty standard, as well as those 10-foot shoulders to provide a place for disabled vehicles to pull over safely. We'd expect it to have a speed limit of 55 miles per hour as well. So this would be a consistent higher speed roadway. A good example of a roadway like this in the project area actually is that improved section of State Road 56, if folks are familiar, coming up out of the Rising Sun area that was improved a number of years back. Now, for those routes that go through one of the towns in the study area, whether that's Aurora or Dillsboro or Versailles or Vevey, we expect the roadway would look different. This image that you see here is really kind of a rural roadway type. So in those urban areas, those towns, we'd look to address any potential traffic issues, but we also look to affect the look and feel of that context of those towns as little as possible. So we'd look for to really try to stay with the existing setting and context as much as possible. We'll also, as we get further in the design process, be looking for locations where it makes sense to add climbing lanes or passing lanes. I mentioned State Road 56 earlier, coming up out of Rising Sun. Folks who are familiar with that roadway know that there's a portion of it that includes a climbing lane. So in the end, we want a roadway that both provides that needed function, that transportation, meets those transportation needs, but also fits within the context of the project area. I think we got the camera back on. Sorry, the internet glitch seems to have gone away. So we are at an important milestone in the process. We're looking for that feedback on that draft purpose and need and those preliminary alternatives so we can confidently move forward in this process. The ultimate goal of the whole process is to get from this long list of preliminary alternatives down to a single approved selected alternative. So throughout that process, we're always going to be evaluating against that purpose and need, but we'll also be developing a lot more information. So, and then as we reduce that number of alternatives, we kind of screen them down, we'll continue to increase the level of detail in the design and environmental data that we use in that process. And throughout that process, we're going to be looking for feedback from the public and agencies, at every step of the way to refine those alternatives wherever we can. It's also possible, as I said earlier, that we create new alternatives along the way, either by mixing and matching elements of alternatives or creating a new route entirely. We got some good feedback last week at the public meetings, and hopefully we'll continue to get that throughout the remainder of the comment period. Now, in terms of the overall process, we're still here in this first box. We've got a draft purpose and need. We've been coordinating with agencies and the public, and we've developed those preliminary alternatives. Now, this fall, we're going to be going through a process of screening those alternatives down to a smaller number. And that's, as I said, that's when we're going to start developing even more detail about the design of them, about collecting a lot more information about the resources that are out there in the project area. Now, the next major milestone would actually be next fall when we publish the draft environmental document. And that document is when the preferred alternative would actually be identified. So what that document will include, it'll have all the details, all the data that went into identifying that preferred alternative, and whether that's the transportation performance, the environmental impacts, the costs, et cetera. At that time, we'll also have a public hearing, and there will be lots of opportunity for the public to engage with the project team. We'll also be reaching out to resource agencies and getting feedback as well. So at the end there will be a comment period, and at the end of that comment period, we'll review those comments and figure out if there's any needs to make modifications to those alternatives. It's still, there's still time to make changes that are appropriate, or whether there's additional analysis needed, whether there's additional data that needs to go out and be collected or not. Then fast forwarding to early 2026, we'd look to publish our final environmental document. And that really represents that final approval from NDOT and Federal Highway of that selected alternative. And it's only at that point that the project can proceed into that final design or construction phase. Mindy, I think it's back to you.
Excellent. Perfect. Thank you so much. So first, we have this timeline available on your screen. Dan walked through a lot of it, but sometimes it's helpful to see the visual. I know it's a little challenging when it's a virtual meeting and you don't have the materials in front of you. So I will flag that all of the meeting materials from last week's public meetings are available on the project website. There's a link in the chat, and there's also a banner right on the front page there that will take you straight to those materials. That includes a copy of the handout, and this timeline is front and center. So that's a good item to have. High-res maps are available as well. We also want to let you know that we are listening throughout this process. There are a lot of groups that we are talking to. They are outlined on your screen there. We have a community advisory committee that is made up of folks who are representatives of local schools, businesses, community groups. We met with them before the public meetings, environmental justice working group as well. Long list of folks that we are talking to, coordination at the local, state, and federal level. These are very important touch points for us. We also welcome small group presentations. If that's something that would benefit your group, please reach out to us. Contact information is on the website as well. We would love to come and talk to your group and provide more information. Obviously, project website that I've already touted is a great resource. Social media as well. Follow us on Facebook and Twitter. And then there are a couple of items that I'll be walking through with the project office and mobile office hours in just a moment. First, I want want to focus on feedback, though. Dan talked about that. It's very important that you have a clear avenue on how to share your feedback. Lots of ways to do that. Online is one way when you go to the project website, whether that is taking one of our comment forms and uploading it or just providing comments. Either works for us. You can take a comment form or just write a letter, a note, and send it to the project office. Send that to us. We do have a project office that I'm going to talk about. And then another thing that we've done is we have put meeting materials in several locations around town, and just want to circle that date on the calendar for you, that September 8th date that Dan talked about. We always welcome comments. There's no cutoff there, but we have to at some point have a point to collect comments. And so for ourselves, we associate the September 8th with public meeting comments. So please do share any comments related to the draft purpose and need and preliminary alternatives by that date. No matter which avenue, they all carry the same weight, whether you unmute yourself and share any comments tonight, whether you drop us a note or whether you email us. Every comment is reviewed by the project team, all become part of the project record. We do want to focus a little bit on mobile office hours. We had our first set of mobile office hours today. Because it's a large project area, as I said, we are located on the southern portion of the project area. We wanted to head north to make ourselves available. So today and then next Tuesday on the 15th, we will be available at Dillsboro Public Library. We are there much of the day from 11 to 5 next Tuesday. It's a good opportunity if you're in that area. We do have a board with the alternatives. We have that handout, which is a nice thing to have in hand to be able to see the map as well, comment forms as well, and then of course members of the project team. So that's a good opportunity. Another opportunity for you, these locations here are all listed on the website. There are 9 areas around the project area where we have located handouts, comment forms, boxes as well. So you can leave a completed comment form. We'll come by after September 8th and pick up those completed forms. So again, you can peruse the list here, and you can also find it on our website. And those project materials are out now and available for you to find with no problems at all. The website, as I mentioned, is a great resource for you to follow our project and to follow our progress along the way. Project updates are very helpful. So if you sign up for those updates, you can sign up for email updates on the website or simply shoot us a text. If you have your phone out right now, all you're going to do is text to that 468-311 number, text NDOT link 101. We don't bombard you, but we do provide updates at milestones, and we want to make sure that you don't miss anything along the way. So it's a good opportunity to follow our progress. Also, I will put in a plug for the project office. So we always have a project office open in Vevey. We're there at the Switzerland County Technology and Education Center right on the 2nd floor. Regular office hours, Monday and Wednesday, every Monday and Wednesday, 10 until 3. I recognize that won't work for all folks. So if you need to make an appointment, use that phone number that's right there on your screen. Give us a call and we're happy to set something up on that front. And that is really the kind of the wrapping up of the presentation.